I got the heck into Dodge City and then I got right the hell back out again. Dodge City, Kansas is awesome and horrible and fascinating somehow all at the same time. And we're going to dig deep into all of it. Our journey begins 2 years ago when a couple of my dearest friends from South Dakota were coming down to Kansas to visit me. They had recently taken an interest in Dodge City, and coincidentally, so had I. Up until this point, I knew 2 things about Dodge City to be true. 1, Dodge City has an utterly fascinating Wild West Victorian era history, and 2, present-day Dodge City, i.e. what we were about to visit, is a complete and utter joke to the rest of Kansas. Literally the only thing I had heard about present-day Dodge City comes from a local talk radio show called Dana and Parks on KMBC for my Kansas City people. And they have this soundbite that repeatedly gets joked about a senator who utterly put his foot in his mouth during a confirmation hearing for Surgeon General. He asked the nominee, "Have you ever been to Dodge City?" with the same drawl as that ludicrous line from Airplane. "Have you ever seen a grown man naked?" Seriously, listen.
Have you ever been to Dodge City, Kansas?
Have you ever seen a grown man naked?
And I promise you, both conversations were equally out of place and inappropriate. I'll put a link in the description just in case you want to learn more about that fiasco. But in fact, these sound bites get tossed around and joked about so often that one day a trucker literally called into the radio station to complain because he went to Dodge City after hearing it mentioned so often. But he was outraged to find that there was nothing there. And it was only then that our 2 well-known radio hosts apologetically admitted that they themselves had never actually been to Dodge City. So, needless to say, I had to go. And thus began our plot to visit the wickedest city in the West. Dodge City has become inextricably linked with the concept of traveling west because the Santa Fe Trail once ran through that area some 50 years before the city itself was even founded. The city officially came to be in 1872 when a man set up shop for the first saloon. Although he was serving alcohol on little more than a plank set atop 2 mounds of sod, it didn't take long for other shops, saloons, and dance halls to follow. A few months later, the first train arrived on the newly laid railroad tracks and the bustling booze industry was off. So yes, we can blame the railway for the evils of both Sears and Dodge City. If you don't already know about my grudge against Sears, you can click up there to learn more. So given all of this, naturally we decided that taking the train was the only correct way to get into Dodge. In Kansas City's historic Union Station, we sat late one night awaiting our train. The station was delightfully atmospheric as we sat within the dimly lit architectural marvel with nothing but a player piano to keep us company in an otherwise empty corridor. "Dodge City," our baffled conductor muttered as he took our tickets. "What the hell is going on in Dodge City?" Good start. We arrived at our destination so early in the morning that nothing was open yet. Literally nothing. But there are statues of cowboys all over the place, so we entertained ourselves by posing with the statues in ridiculous fashion. One thing we were quick to notice was exactly how proud the tourism board must have been of their slogan, because we saw these posters plastered everywhere. "Okay, Dodge, we got the heck into you, but now what?" After some tea and coffee at a place called Redbeard and a pleasant discussion with Mr. Redbeard himself, we were ready for a trolley tour. We saw and smelled far too many cows awaiting slaughter, and for something that was advertised as a history experience, the trolley tour didn't really do any kind of justice in explaining the plight of the indigenous people of the plains during the expansion west. Really, nothing we saw that day came anywhere close to addressing the massive historical elephant in the room, so that was a little disappointing. But in a way, the trolley tour really reminded me a little bit of my hometown, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Sioux Falls, you see, literally has a slaughterhouse right next door to the titular landmark, the Sioux Falls, and you can take a trolley to go visit said falls. And South Dakota as a whole is also just not particularly great on native issues. But surprisingly, the similarities to my hometown didn't end there. You see, one of the only redeeming qualities of Sioux Falls is that it has a giant fiberglass muffler man named Mr. Bendo. And as it turns out, Mr. Bendo has an evil twin brother living in Dodge City. Who knew? Pushing all this aside for a moment, my favorite stop on the trolley tour was a view of two enormous sundials located next to the train station, reflecting two different time zones. Dodge was the first U.S. town built west of the Louisiana Purchase line, and when the train stations first set standard time zones, the line between Central and Mountain was drawn right there at Dodge City. Ironically, though, our train arrived before sunrise and left well after dark, so no train passenger today would be able to refer to them, yet there they remain untouched since 1883. Train stations and time zones did so much to influence the era in which hair work flourished, so although it was just after 9 a.m. and we were already exhausted, I was determined to find the historical hair in Dodge City. And find some we did, but not before a few missteps. When we first got off the trolley, we were greeted by a short little fellow in full head-to-toe cowboy garb, and he claimed to be the oldest and smallest U.S. Marshal. He was a delightful fellow, and he promised to tell me the real history of Dodge City that they won't tell you on the tours if I sent him a postcard when I got back home to Kansas City. And I did send him a postcard, but he never responded. I hope he's okay. He was the oldest Marshal, after all, but I have to know, what was he going to tell me? This will haunt me until my dying day. I just want to know the secrets of Dodge City. Our next stop was to the Boot Hill Museum, which was built up to look like a facade of several Wild West shops and saloons. I drank a sarsaparilla because it felt thematic, and we poked around a comically kitschy yard that was made to look like an overly exaggerated Boot Hill cemetery, complete with cowboy boot toes sticking up out of the dirt all over the place. You know, to demonstrate how shallow the graves were. Although I'm positive that not every grave had a literal pair of boots popping up, there was a reason why the graves in the original Boot Hill Cemetery were so sloppily dug. The town was built, as they say, on the consumption of whiskey and women, and all of the cowboys passing through to partake had guns. And not only is it speculated that Dodge City may have actually originated the term red light district, but it also had one of the earliest and most literal instances of the wrong side of the track. Men would come through, get drunk, shoot each other, and then end up thrown in a sloppily dug hole in Boot Hill, as you do. But as difficult as this may be to believe about the Wild West or the US in general, people ended up shooting each other so often that they actually banned guns on the north side of the track. Everyone crossing over the track needed to check their guns at the door. The south side, however, well, that was the wrong side of the tracks. We even got to watch a dramatic reenactment of a good old-fashioned Dodge City gunfight happening on the wrong side of the tracks. Actually, we saw two. Two of them! But luckily, the rest of Boot Hill Museum was filled with a variety of Victorian artifacts, including Victorian mourning wear, hair receivers, curling irons, and hair color. But I wasn't content, as I had yet to see any hair art or hair jewelry, and surely there must be hair work somewhere in this town. It was then, luckily, or so we thought, we spotted a sign for the Wax Gunfighters Museum across the street. And wax figures are fun, and they often use real human hair, but nothing could have prepared us for the trap that was the Dodge City Wax Museum. We ascended the stairs to where we were told the wax figures were, and at first glance things seemed fairly normal with a couple of wax figures of, Wild West sheriffs and such. But then, the further you went, the weirder it got. Because all of a sudden there was Lyndon B. Johnson, followed by Sitting Bull. Okay, not sure what these have to do with Dodge City. And right around the corner from Sitting Bull was one singular funhouse mirror, but the hallway was just too dark to even see yourself reflected in it. Seriously, you can't make this up. And then we found a corner with some monsters, literal monsters, like Draculas and Frankensteins and the like. Why? Nobody knows. The three of us laughed it off as an awful tourist trap, but little did we know that the Wax Museum tourist trap was actually just a front for the Kansas Teachers Hall of Fame. And that, my friends, was the real trap. In filing down the stairs, attempting to head for the exit, we were spearheaded by a woman who had a pleasant smile on her face, but nefarious intention in her heart. She put herself between us and the exit and extended an arm with which to steer us away from the exit and into a side room. This, we were told, was the Kansas Teachers Hall of Fame. We told the docent that none of us had attended school in the state of Kansas, but this did not deter her from leading us on the longest and most irrelevant tour I think I have ever been on. In the main room, we were shown framed photographs of all the teachers who had been inducted into the Wall of Fame this year. Then we were shown an entire wall of poster boards organized by year with previous inductees. And when we again stated that we did not know a single teacher in the state of Kansas, she replied by showing us the computer where we could search for somebody by name. If that wasn't bad enough, we were ushered down a hallway into a second room filled with vintage school supplies. One of the desks came from the Sears catalog, so that's neat, I guess, but there were mostly just a lot of books on display, some of which were blatantly racist, so there's that. Then, yes, it's still going, we were taken out back to a little one-room schoolhouse where we were literally quizzed on various questions like, what do you think this was used for? And what states do you think were missing when this 45-star US flag was made? And etc. And at this point, we were so awkwardly trying to be polite and act engaged, but we were also way past done. The docent then pulled us over to an outhouse while still quizzing us and asked us, why might there be a Sears catalog sitting in there? But at this point, I had had more than enough. I get it. Yes, I know the pages of the Sears catalog were used as toilet paper, but please, please, please let us leave. I was so tired and cranky and impatient, and I had to find the hair. So we did the whole, oh my God, is that the time? We're going to be late for our... The one little bit of that whole experience which was moderately interesting was this sign that listed the rules for teaching 1872. This sign outlined the overt sexism, such as men who are allowed to court women once a week or twice if they go to church, but women who get married and or engage in, and I quote, unseemly conduct will just be fired. But the funniest one of all is rule number 8, which states that any teacher who smokes, uses liquor in any form, frequents pool or public halls, or gets shaved at a barber shop will have to give good reason to suspect his worth and integrity. And I just love how they liken getting shaved in a barber shop to drinking at the bar. Like, what was happening in the barber shops of Kansas in 1872 that would lead them to think, he got shaved in a barber shop. I'm highly suspicious of his ability to teach our children. But anyway, thankfully, our very next stop finally yielded us the hair work that I was so desperate to hunt down. We made our way up to the 1882 Home of Stone, which was built by a successful Dodge City bootmaker. And interestingly enough, it is the only structure in the city built using limestone bricks, and each of those bricks are a whopping 2 feet deep, so it's a pretty neat house. The very first thing I saw upon arriving was a mantle displaying 2 hair wreaths. I am seriously like a bloodhound for hair, because if it is there, I will sniff it out immediately. Made primarily using the standard GIMP technique, there is nothing astonishing about their construction, but they are very elegantly Victorian. One even incorporates a photograph, which is always a great treat, but unfortunately there is no known history or names associated with either of these. I would, however, like to call attention to the green stems used in one of the wreaths. My friend Dee asked me a question about it because, of course, she has witnessed all manner of my hair shenanigans, but she hadn't seen green stems like this before. When I mentioned that it was just thread or embroidery floss, the tour guide unfortunately fought me on that and tried to argue. She insisted that the wreaths were 100% human hair and that absolutely no other material was used whatsoever. So that is just untrue, and that does go to show that you cannot always trust 100% of the information presented on these historical house tours. Because in fact, a majority of hair flower stems are wrapped with some kind of thread or silk, and it's usually a color that matches the hair. However, there are a handful of hair wreaths I've encountered which use a colorful embroidery thread, or even rarer yet, occasionally yarn. These make for a much thicker stem and are sometimes a contrasting color to the hair. Most often, if the stems aren't wrapped in a color that matches the hair, it will be green in order to mimic nature, or black for a neutral contrast. The trend I've seen over the years is that wreaths with green stems or less conventional materials like yarn tend to originate from the Midwestern United States, as I've never seen one quite like it that's been confirmed to be from another region or country. At least not yet, anyway. I don't have a specific reason for this. Perhaps it was material they had easier access to, or it could have just been an aesthetic choice that wasn't widespread. Before the end of the house tour, we managed to find several dolls, which likely did have real human hair, and even another bit of gimp work. This time outside of a frame and tied up with a bow. Something like this could have once been framed, or maybe it was intended to be framed but never made it that far, but I have seen a few instances of little hairwork bouquets like this that were fastened to a pin in order to wear it as a brooch, so that is also a possibility. As the day began to draw to a close, we attended a deliciously campy dinner theater variety show in a replica of the famous Long Branch Saloon featuring Miss Kitty and her can-can dancers. It was kitschy and underwhelming, yet somehow it was exactly what I needed out of Dodge City. And so, with several more hours before our train would depart, there was only one thing left to do: drink whiskey. The Boot Hill Distillery is located on top of the original Boot Hill Cemetery grounds, so I was told that they guarantee a genuine spirit in every bottle. Although whiskey is what I sought, I found myself even more impressed with their prickly ash bitters. I was immediately taken with the old-fashioned label, but I also came to learn that the label and recipe, well, as much of the recipe is still legal to recreate today, were direct recreations of a genuine product that was originally marketed as a medicine in the 1800s. There's even a photograph of an early Dodge City with a sign that says, "The carrying of firearms is strictly forbidden," followed by, "Try prickly ash bitters." So, of course, I bought a bottle to take home. I wondered to myself if I could pay for it out of my HSA, because, after all, it cures all diseases of the blood, liver, stomach, kidney, bowels, and etc. It also purifies the blood and cleanses the system, but be warned, it has cathartic properties that forbid its use as a drink. And children can drink it as readily as adults can. Oh, old-timey medicine, you're fun. I'd like to say that we ended the trip by serenely winding down on the rooftop patio of the distillery, reflecting on the day and sipping on our prickly whiskey, but alas, that would be too pleasant for a trip to Dodge City. What really happened was a lot of aimlessly killing time until the train station opened after the distillery closed, followed by miserably awaiting our train and freezing our butts off on the cold benches while we were repeatedly informed of delays. Cold, hungry, and far too tired, all we really wanted to do was get the hell out of Dodge, but when it seemed like we had a few hours of waiting left, I decided to at least try to look for something to keep us all warm. What I wanted to do was walk to the only nearby gas station in the hopes of finding blankets or sweaters for us, but the gas station had nothing at all, and my cane broke on the walk there, so I had to hitchhike to a Walmart that was really far away and then back to the train station. It was an ordeal, but I was able to return alive and bearing blankets and pillows. So let me just say, 24 hours in Dodge City is too many hours in Dodge City. After our painstaking series of delays, our kindly conductor, the same one from the previous morning, greeted us and said, "Did you see everything?" "Oh, yes, sir, I think we saw everything." "Did you see the sad zoo?" "Well, no, I guess we didn't see the sad zoo." And then he just gazed off into the distance, his voice trailing off as he mused, "It's such a sad zoo." So, feeling confident that we had made the right decision by not seeing the sad zoo, We boarded the passenger car, and as our train began to roll away from the station, I turned to my friends and I said, "Let's get the hell out of Dodge." Oh, and did I tell you that we also did a cheesy Wild West photo shoot? Because we definitely did that too. And dare I say, it is the perfect memento for an imperfect day. Horrible trips to Dodge City and the hopefully better than horrible videos that ensue are funded with the support of our patrons. If you are a theater person like me, then I highly suggest you check out the Playreaders podcast. It is hosted by my friends Nick and Dee. They are the ones who came with me on this journey to Dodge City. On that podcast, they read and discuss often underknown and underproduced plays throughout history, and it is very fascinating. I know I have learned of some plays through this podcast that I never knew existed, but I'm now utterly obsessed with, so definitely go check them out. All the links will be in the description, and thank you all so much for being here. I will see you all next time.